Hey Dave, good morning for me, good evening for you.
Hello.
How are you
Good
doing this
evening to
Friday?
me. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I'm doing fine. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Enjoying a good Friday as always. It's nice to start out with a stream, and I'm certainly interested in the topic today and some of the things that will lead into the conversations on avoiding surprises. Because there are good surprises and there's definitely bad surprises as well.
Yeah, yeah. And these are the ones that might catch you on a Friday afternoon or in a weekend or in your holiday, and people start calling you. There's something wrong with the data. We need your help.
Hopefully, you at least get them on a Tuesday, not a Friday. It's like Friday afternoon, you got places to be, and like something breaks. Um, it honestly just it reminds me of a random anecdote, but the like it's been probably thankfully about 6 years now, but there's definitely been a few times, and I'm sure it's at some point in your career you've had to do this as well, where there's a surprise that comes at like 9 p.m. for a client that needs to deliver a report at like 7 a.m. and you're basically up the entire night like trying to apply the fix. Like I said, I'm gracious enough to have not experienced that in about 5 to 6 years now, where I've been up late, but never like until the sun's coming up the next day. But there's been a few times where I've had some nasty surprises. When I used to work for another company, we're like, we need you to fix this. Like, I don't really want to, yes, but the client needs it fixed by 7 a.m. And you're in a cram session with your coworker trying to get that done. So those are not fun surprises.
No, no. It's not always a bad thing to just work together on the solution, getting it fixed, getting something deployed and working. But
Yeah.
if it's something that you could have caught some time ago on an easier, quieter time, then you're like, oh, why does it happen now? Why didn't I notice it earlier? And then it's less fun to work on that.
I'm not as upset if I at least am the one responsible for it, meaning like I had an oversight or something. But when it's the client who has had a week or two to maybe review the information and they finally review it like a couple hours before they're supposed to deliver it, and like, oh, I've identified this, can you fix, like, we've had 2 weeks that you could have told me this, why did you wait till the last minute?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was those like I wish I had a scalable rate in terms of frustration levels. Like, I want to bill more if this is more annoying. But yeah, digressions aside, I do think that this is a great opportunity as well. To give yourself an opportunity to introduce yourself to the channel, maybe give a little background on yourself as well, and kind of leading into the topics we'll have today.
Yes. Well, first, thank you for having me here again. It's been
Absolutely.
a while, and last time was also really fun. So I was looking forward to this. So I'm Dave Ryder. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a freelance consultant in data analytics. I build data solutions using Microsoft products. So if it's either Power BI or any of the Azure data related services, then I'm your guy. And I've been doing that for over a decade, and I yeah, what can I tell? Power BI expert, and also Python, Databricks, Synapse, all over the place. I've been awarded twice with the Microsoft MVP Award, and I love to speak and help the community, help Microsoft build their products better, improve them. So that's a little intro.
And I will say there's a funny coincidence that because you're off both doing your own thing now, but I know you used to do a lot of collaborations together with Mark, and I think you're still doing a group training at SQL Bits, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
And he's on like next week, and it is a pure coincidence, like not actually planned. I just think through my effort of just reaching out to individuals if who wanted to present when it just happened to be that you fell on the 2 following weeks between each other. So he pointed that out, like, and I actually had to double check. Oh, that is right. Yeah, you and Dave are crossing paths very closely on my channel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I noticed that as well. I didn't know it, and I think he also didn't know about my planned session. And I've been working with
Yeah.
Mark for like 5 years, and we went to events together. submitted to speak at those events both. So there was like this moment where we were like, hey, shall we do a training session together, like we also did at clients together? And yeah, that felt really natural. And yeah, since a couple of years now, we sometimes do that. And there's one coming up in SQL Bits in March. And yeah, whole day of data platform and Power BI monitoring. So if people want to come and are curious, if they can improve their cost management, performance management,
Yep.
maybe Power BI premium capacity utilization monitoring, anything related to all of those topics, then yeah, they should try to come to our pre-con session. And
I just
it's
dropped the
fun.
link in the chat as well. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Great. Yeah, it's usually when I'm at an event, they're like, "Hey, is Mark also here?" And the other way around.
I think the term that he used that I've forgotten it's the Dutch guys. Essentially, they're the colloquial term for the two of you. But yeah, also just like as a random like anecdote, as a website owner, like my goodness, they have a very long URL for your for your session because they use a full title in the actual URL string. So it is a quite a long link. But yes, please check out his link over in the description. I will also be at SQL Bits, so we'll have a chance to hang out and have fun there. As like people on the stream know, it is arguably one of my top conferences that I like to go to every year, mostly just for the community and some of the really fun like after parties and costumes. Like this year is D&D themed, so we all get to dress up for one of the parties in some type of fantasy outfit. So that's going to be quite entertaining. We'll have a lot of wizards and clerics and other stuff.
Yeah, and it also matches nice with the demo data that I'm using today. Maybe also that event. Yeah, D&D, fantasy, wizards, trolls, whatever.
I didn't also like. This is my fourth time attending SQL Bits. Only the second time in person because right at the beginning of the pandemic, I was going to do a pre-con, but then it went virtual, so I just delivered it virtually. And then the year after that was virtual. Last year was the first time I attended, but I didn't really get the memo that there is a specific like after SQL Bits event where it's encouraged to dress up in costume. So I actually had to run into London. I took a train into town and I had to go buy a costume last minute. I got a Chewbacca costume because it was, video game related. Figured that felt in the same realm. This year I actually know, so I will definitely plan ahead to figure out a fun costume to bring. But it was a last minute purchase.
Yeah.
Not a cheap one to try to find a costume for the party for that one.
Well, yeah, it's good that you at least put in the effort. That's always appreciated, And last year I had to return back home before Friday evening. I think even on Thursday evening I was home. But this year I am. I will be there. Yeah.
Excellent. Digressions aside, I'm super looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I also do see that this fun little meme up on the screen that I think will be a great segue into talking about some data issues as well. If you're ready to go.
Yeah. We already talked about things that can surprise you, and I always say there are no data issues if you don't check for data issues. But all jokes aside, it's one of these things that can really frustrate the project, and it is also as a consultant developer sometimes really difficult to get the full the full width of all of the things that can go wrong related to data quality. We try to do our best to understand all of the data, but seasonality, some the outside edge use cases can be really difficult to spot and learn unless you've been working with this data for a long time. And I hope that I can inspire people to use this framework that I'm going to explain, and that they will also try to involve other people to really build up this knowledge about the data and the expectation of the data. And that you can you can ask your business users, your experts to really help to identify how the data should look like. So you can then check if that meets real data. Yeah. So how do I do that? I have been working with, I think, for over a year now with this framework. And before I will dive into this this solution or framework that I want to share, I will demo some data. That's sample data, demo data that I've gotten from my friend Kurt, and he has this sort of D&D related company, a fake company, and it's from a guy called Dumbledoos, and he retired and got a business selling adventure equipment, and his company name is then called Dead. So if you ever see my demos the word Dead, it's just referring to this company. So thanks, Kurt, for letting me use this demo set. And now onto the framework. It's called Great Expectations, and it is an open source framework, and probably you will drop the link in the chat, right? And it's greatexpectations.io. And if you go there, you'll see lots of documentation and links to a Slack community that's also really helpful. There's a GitHub page, and there's a lot to learn about this framework. But I hope that I can give you a short introduction so that you understand what it's about. It will mainly do three things for you: data testing, or validating, or checking if the expectation that you have against your data is correct. And it will also document that for you. So that's one of the really helpful things about this framework as well. You don't have to make your own reports about how the data was validated, how it was scored, what the results were over time. It helps you with that. And third, it does a really good way of profiling the data for you. And that can also really help to understand your data. There's other frameworks and tools and modules and packages out there that can help you with profiling, but it's also built into this framework. So that's nice. And then what are we talking about with expectations? It can be on many levels that you want to check your expectations, many dimensions. Here are just some examples, but please know that there are, I think right now, more than 200 built-in expectation types, and these are just a subset of that. So whenever you think like, hey, can I verify, can it validate the data using another angle, then probably yes, it's already in there. So what you can do is check if a column exists. Check if a column data type is how you expect it. Check if a column is unique, if it's not null, if the values are between 1 and 100, if it matches a regex, regular expression. And also the bottom one is one of the more complex ones, where you can check the KL divergence of a column. And that goes more to machine learning, data science type of verifications for your data. Okay. So that's really cool. And let me check. I thought I had this. So this is also just a snapshot of an old website page of the Great Expectations, different colors than how it's now. But it's just a glimpse of what was capable out of the box.
There's I'll be curious to see some of these because it's you know, and I'm sure as we'll get into this, it's the conversation on, do you provide an error? Do you clean the data? Is it a automatic solution, or is it something where you need to then go peer review? But uh, I actually just recently had this with a client where they had a it was a client birthday column. This is also manually inputted data. So I went to do a list.generate to create like a calendar table essentially off of certain data, not realizing there was some bad data in there. One of the dates was like in the year 6,000 or 7,000. And the RAM kept getting eaten up, and then the query would just fail and run out of memory. And I tried to figure out why, like, oh, it's because it's creating a calendar range for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those just like, what on earth is failing about this query? Ah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Power Query is not really helpful. Just explaining what it's doing currently. Sometimes
Yeah.
I run into that, but yeah, that's a good find. And maybe if you would check the data right from the beginning when you load it, and verify using these functions, if it meets your expectation, or yeah, maybe profile it first and then let it create these expectations for you. So then you
Mhm.
can run that every time, and also before you start working with that data.
Mm, exactly.
It
Yep.
the framework does not correct it for you. I don't know if I would be a fan of that even, but it identifies the problematic columns or rows, and then it warns you, and you can do then yeah, what you want. Maybe you can stop your data loading process if you embed it in your flow. Um, I have built a little example in how you can use this inside a Power Query transformation. So if the data does not meet your expectations, then you can let it fail. Or maybe if you say, I don't know if it's that if yeah, important, then you can maybe list it somewhere, have a report page showing the results of these expectation validations. So you can open it, browse through it. And as I said,
Exactly.
one of the nice things about this framework is that it sort of works both ways. You'll have tests like these expectation things on the left, and it can compile that into documentation, and then it just sort of creates sentences in human readable form for you. And maybe for me, that's not really important, especially if you have worked with this framework for a bit. Then the stuff on the left is really natural to read, and you can just see, oh, okay, this is happening. But especially for your stakeholders, the people that don't really work with this framework or even with data that often, for them it's really important to know, okay, the value should be between 60 and 75 at least 95% of the time. And then that human readable interactivity is really important. Yeah, then this is a little bit of an overview of where you can get these expectations from. And this framework, you feed those expectations into it, and then it can do its magic. But where does it come from? And there are
Hmm.
yeah, some ways of doing that, some methods. The top one is just sitting down, doing your thing, or grabbing an expert and doing it together with an expert and writing these JSON statements together. So the thing on the left here, expect column values to be between for
Yep.
which column, and then some parameter values. And as I said, there are like 200 of these types of checks. So when you have worked with this a lot, you know the out of the box types, and you can just type them in yourself, copy paste some previous JSON values, and then yeah, get it out there. But there's also more interactive and automated ways of doing this. And as I mentioned before, there's a built-in profiler, and you can also let make use of an interactive workflow where it's sort of asking you some questions, and you can answer those, and then it also outputs the JSONs. And the bottom one is about metadata. So maybe if you have this repository of what the source system should look like, then you can of course also use that with some custom scripting and transform that into expectations. I haven't used that myself yet.
Okay.
And
I like flowcharts. They always help me learn a lot because I'm a massive visual learner for sure.
Yeah, who isn't? If somebody says they're not, then I don't really believe that. But
better said is, I think it's not that they say they're not a visual learner. It's more that they're just like, it's nice, but I don't need it. I can also just read the text and still understand it.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's of course this grade. How do you call that? The level of how much.
Yeah. Exactly.
So when the framework has done an execution, this is what a result could look like. And one of the important things is, of course, did it succeed or not? And for this one, it didn't. So the success is false. It worked on 253,405 rows, and more than 7,000 were not as expected. And what did it do? Check the column values were not null. And which column to use already. So that's really raw data, of course. But you can use this and transform it into some visuals, or dump it in a table, dump it in your data lake for later reference. Then also, how can it look like in a documentation style? This is also something I picked from their website, but I want to show you more interactive example of this, a full example. So I'll just continue, go to the next slide. I think I covered this as well, but let me see if I want to tell more about this. Yeah, I think it's good to just take a second for this. So on the left, you have these stakeholders, and they can be the developers that create your Power BI solution, your data pipelines, and they help to build the documentation, the expectations of the data, and that is then being used while the data is being scored. And then here in the middle, this icon is the old icon for this framework, and the data would come in, it would be scored, the documentation would be created, and maybe the data was not according to expectations. You raise an alert, an alarm, it can be an email.
Okay.
Maybe you stop the pipeline. The pipeline has its own built-in alerting notification mechanism. If you look at Power BI, you can schedule the refresh and set the notification alert if you want to know when it filled. And you can then, if you want, I think I wanted to say you can then create a report on top of that, but I think this icon is more like, okay, if everything is good, you ensure you have high quality data insights because of that. Yeah, all right. Do I have more that I want to talk about? Now, I'll open this link to get an example on the documentation. Then we'll dive into the code to have an example.
Excellent. Is that one of the ones that you gave me, by the way, that I can put into the channel chat? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't see it in the YouTube.
I didn't share that with you before, but This is a public URL.
Okay.
I think people just could browse it themselves. Let me put it in the chat. Right. If you could paste that in the channel.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you. I'm getting it.
So this is a documentation page that is automatically generated. I didn't create any of this HTML. Let me close the tutorial. And right now it has two main sections: the validation results and the expectation suites. Let's first
Looks like you might have turned, just as an FYI, looks like you turned off your camera when you pasted it in the Skype. I still hear you, and you're still coming through. You just need to turn your camera back on.
I'll do that.
Otherwise, we get a talking S for Skype.
I have turned it on again, but Skype is now in full screen mode. Go to the call. All right. Yeah, it should be good from my side. Maybe you can troubleshoot.
That's it. Oh, there we go. Got it.
There we go. I see myself again.
Excellent.
Cool.
We did have one question. If you just, if you could maybe spend another minute just elaborating on what the definition of expected is. I already answered it a bit as like it's something that you need to define for your organization based on your requirements, but I'd love to hear a little bit of an elaboration for the
well, that's fine. That's always good. So keep them coming, the questions. I'll try to explain, answer the question based on this. So in this framework, you can have a set of expectations, and they call it a suite. And let's take a look at the that orders, and that again is the company name, right? So it's a bit misleading maybe. So here are all of the expectations that I have put in for the orders table, and there are first a couple of table level expectations, and I say it must have greater than or equal to 5,000 and less than or equal to 20,000 rows. That's just my expectation for the orders table. If there are less or more than these numbers, something is off. And another one is I expect these columns in any order, but at least these need to be there. If I'm missing a column, it's not according to my expectations. So that's already, I hope that helps to answer the question of what is an expectation, but there's more. We also have column level expectations, 52 across 13 columns. And, the customer key can never be null and must be of type long. What do we have more? The net order quantity needs to be equal to 1 and or greater than and less than this. I know that an order can have more quantity. This came from the profiler, and this is apparently this was the maximum ever in history. If I want this in production, I would tweak that 395. Maybe put it some higher number. An order with 500 products is probably just fine. So I hope that explains that.
They're good.
So this is what I mentioned about this human readable documentation about your expectations. If a business stakeholder wants to know what are we verifying, they can just open this page and browse through it, and they can maybe see if something is missing or need to be added or is incorrect in this list. There are some technical checks in here, but a lot is business focused. And that's the type of things that, yeah, I know me as a developer, consultant, can probably easily miss. Okay, so I go back to the homepage, and this page, I'm hosting it now in my Azure Storage account. I think people can access it, but if that's not the case, then too bad. Then there's some IP blocking things in place. You would ideally host this page somewhere internally, so only the organizational people can access it. Maybe only the people involved in this platform or product that you're working with. If it's a sales dashboard, it might be okay, but if it's a finance or HR dashboard, maybe the expectations are sensitive, the validation results are sensitive. So take that into account. You might need some authentication, authorization mechanisms in place around this documentation web page before you put it out there in the public. Validation results. These are some historic runs that I did, verifying the dead orders. You see the run name, run time, and whether it's exceeded or not. Let's dive into this example, and you can see some metadata about the entire run. So apparently I had 52 expectations, and 12 of them failed. And if one of them fails, the entire suite fails. And then you can see what happened. So remember this one where we needed to have 5,000 or between 5,000 and 20,000 orders. The observed value was 8,000. So that's fine. So this gives you a little bit of feedback about the quality of the current data as well. You can turn that on or off if you want, per row, per expectation. So that's tweakable. And yeah, also this is really interactive. Yeah, not interactive, but human readable and easily consumable. So let's get into the details. How do you work with this? In essence,
I like the automation.
In its core, it's a Python library. Let me show you how I use it right here. I have added. Oh. So for this demo, I have used Azure Databricks. I'm now in Azure Databricks, and I've used a compute cluster, which is just a bunch of machines, and you can make it big or large or small, whatever you want. And those machines, you run your code on them. So just more practical than running it on my laptop, because I have my data in Azure, the compute is in Azure, and it can scale up and down up to my liking. So if you're totally new to this, yeah, it's something that is quite commonly used in the Azure Data Platform side of things. And this library is called Great Expectations. I've mentioned that before, and I have installed it on this cluster. So now I can start.
I have two questions, just by the way, in the chat that I wanted to bring up. You mentioned profiler a couple times, and Matthias wanted to know if you could elaborate a little bit on what you define as a profiler.
So the profiler is not someone who defines what should be expected. It could be. It's an interesting ambiguity here. But when I was talking about it, I mentioned a little engine that would look at the current data and automatically scan it and then see what the data should look like or looks like, and then so it makes a profile out of the current data. And if you have ever used the feature within Power Query, I think it's also called a data profiler. Let me double check. I should have it at my disposal quite quickly. So I'm now in Power Query in a data set where I also have the same products table right here. And if you look here at the column profile, this is also a profile. And this is what I was talking about. So you have statistics, value distributions about the content of your current data.
Okay.
And that is what's also built into the Great Expectations product. And many of the data tools currently in that we use have a built-in capability to do this. So I mentioned I'm using Databricks. In Databricks, we have this notebook style that I'm currently viewing, where we have little pieces of script. Here I have a one-line piece of script. I can add more if I want. And then immediately I have the output of that script. And what I'm doing here is I'm reading the data from my data lake, and it can be displayed. This is the exchange rate table. And here again, let's stick with the product table. I have the product table. And also in Databricks, there is a feature to profile the data. So if you don't want to use the built-in profiler from Great Expectations, you can also use other ways of profiling the data. I see here that many of these columns don't have any missing data. So it makes sense to add an expectation that this column should not be null, because that's currently also what's happening. So if I think, okay, sounds good, the brand name, yeah, I don't want the brand name to be missing from my data. So I add a rule for that. And maybe I see here the business unit, I have 3 values. One of them is really low, one of them has the majority of that, but only these 3. So it probably makes sense to add a rule, and rule is the expectation, that I expect the product business unit to have to be in this set of values. And then if it's not, the rule will fail. And so you can go on and on, trying to understand your data, browsing through it. And here you see the product group that has missing values. So maybe if you don't understand your data yet, or you haven't profiled your data yet, you would think, product group, I expect it to be filled all of the time. I don't expect missing values. Then you add a rule for that, and the rule will fail suddenly, because there's actually the possibility of missing data. And let's assume for now that that's correct. Doesn't have to be filled all of the time. Then that's a bit how the profiler can help you to create and build up that set of expectations for you.
What's your experience with the type of data source and the need to do various profilings like this, outside of just data discovery to figure out, distributions and stuff, but like in actual terms of data quality?
I think it's really essential if you want to make a valuable product for your business users to do this profiling, to really understand what's going on. A lot of the times during our work, and it doesn't really matter what we did, if we created a data pipeline and moved some data around, or if we made this Power BI report on top of a single source or on top of the data warehouse, in any of those types of projects, there usually was a moment where we discovered data quality issues. And nobody was aware of that. So already that was a big benefit of our work. It's like a collateral damage in a positive way. And doing that made me aware of how important it is to do these kind of profiling things. And even today at my client, I was like taking a look using exactly this profiling feature in Databricks. I took a look at the output of our product, and I noticed one column had 7% missing values.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
didn't trust that. So I went to the business people and they said, that's weird. So, that if you've
Yep.
never done this, try to explore it and see how it can help you. And even if you don't discover anything weird, then that acknowledges your data quality, your awareness of the data. Maybe there's nothing new for you in here. Well, that's also good to know.
There is a couple questions that I have that I'll bring up in a minute, but I do also want to mention the fact that most clients who have bad data, by the time they hire someone like myself, and I'm sure you, don't realize necessarily that they have bad data. So you can't ask them where the bad data is. You need to discover it. And that comes through some type of data discovery where it's, finding the birthday column that has the, badly inputted information. And I think there's a song and dance between catching it like this, but then also setting up rules to make sure that when the data goes in, you're not allowed to put in bad data. So setting up like if you have an input form, you're not allowed to pick a date in the future for a birthday or something like that. So it throws an error back at them rather than accepting the information. So eventually you get to a point where hopefully this entire dashboard that you have is basically like all signs green, nothing is wrong. But I think kind of working in parallel with both of them, but it really does require like a Sherlock Holmes investigator hat from you to be able to go look at the data, and every data source is going to be different to know what to look for, but you have to be proactive on doing that, and kind of figuring out what is contained within any particular column that you're importing into a report or a data warehouse or data lake.
Yeah.
I had a good question from Didier. I wanted to pop on. So he wants to know if the data stays on the machine or does it go through the internet?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question and really important these days. The data stays on the machine. So you start using the library, the package, and the package will be obtained from PyPy or any other public source. And if you can't reach the internet at all, then you need to download that package yourself, maybe even scan it for vulnerabilities. And then you have it offline and nothing will be sent to the internet or downloaded from the internet. Especially the data will never go to the internet. It's all local transformations, local engine.
And I have one other just follow up. I answered it a little bit, just mentioning that I've noticed that input forms and flat files are my most common observations of bad data. Anytime a human is involved in data entry, where it's not being just collected from a machine. But Matthias was wanting to know where do you see bad data coming around, or what are some common patterns for like missing values or anything related to that?
Yeah, what you already mentioned is quite common. So input data from a human, that's really one of the biggest drivers behind that. But I also noticed a lot of the misaligned expectations. I wouldn't immediately say it's bad data, but misaligned expectations can also come from merging many systems into one place. Maybe you have two CRM systems or a CRM system, sales system, and another system where you have client data and names of clients, names of products, stuff like that. If you then merge that back together in a central data warehousing BI solution, then it can often be the case that from one of the systems, the data is different than from the others. And so Mm, yeah, maybe
I
the
and I was just gonna say I want to maybe paraphrase that a little bit to say like keys and joins are a big culprit from what I'm hearing as an overarching story to that is uh, between the systems. It's not bad data, but it's missing data because you have an incomplete key because maybe something's happened or the joins aren't working as they should be. So you're missing that 20% of your information because it's an incomplete join.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's really common. And I remember from this data, Kurt and I were discussing this data set, and he said, okay, pay attention to this column, the brand class. And um, in, back in the day, this 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 system that that organization used only had um, products, non-magic products, magic products, and now they have brands, magic brands and non-magic brands. And this was sort of a conscious, non-conscious thing by the marketing people, and they didn't know that it would affect the BI solution. That suddenly these new categories would appear in the brand class, and all reports now split the data. And they didn't want that. For them, the magic brand is just a magic product. They renamed things, and now, so
Yep.
th- that's also something like a misaligned expectation. And it's not per se sort of bad, but you do need to act on it. Maybe you want to merge all of the old values into the new value.
Yeah, I mean, I have an exact scenario where, and I'll keep it anonymous for the client, but I'm literally working with a client right now that does take a lot. One, they take a lot of input data from people filling out surveys, public surveys. As you can imagine, very messy information to begin with in terms of mapping the categories. But prior to 2022, the ID for each survey ID was like 6 digits. Then in post 2000, post this date, they added a seventh digit to indicate the number of people who were part of the party that filled out the survey. But they also, with the new table, in this fact table, they took the prior ones, did a migration to remap them to add the new keys so they exist in both systems. But you have to figure out which ones are actually previous historical versus. It's a very messy process for it, but it's a lot of key alignment on top of a whole bunch of other stuff. And like it's just one of those where honestly, like a tool like this would have been pretty helpful. I was already doing it to a degree with like histograms and other stuff, just Power Query and stuff, but I can see a lot of use cases to be able to just plug it into here and just get a quick summary of
Yeah,
spreads and everything else. But yeah, any type of migration, as Houston pointed out in the chat, I think this would be very useful when you're doing remappings or migrations of systems.
yeah, especially we're this is sort of a side topic because we're now just playing around with
Yeah.
Databricks features, but um, I've been using this a lot lately. There's also this visualization editor where you can quickly visualize that data set that you loaded using all kinds of built-in visuals. And I love Power BI, but getting the data into Power BI, it might not even be possible. Some clients, they block direct loading of Power BI from things like Databricks. So having a built-in capability of just visualizing the data in any way that I think is necessary, or having this automated profiler, which also visualizes the data in a way that's it can take away a long time of doing it yourself. And even so, it works both ways. If you need to do this yourself and trying to think about the things that might be wrong and then visualizing that to confirm it, it takes a lot of time. But also, the profiler might just put some things in front of you that you never thought of yourself. So that's also a big benefit.
Agreed. Yep. And I'm curious, where do you think the tipping point of a scale is? So, like, as an example, a mom and pop individual, a small to medium sized business of, a couple dozen employees, and they might do one or two new reports or data sets a year. small enough that like arguably you could maybe just manually review the data when you build it and do it out. So like where would you see like a tipping point is of a this is probably going to be overall a cost and time saver? And think of it like the pro versus premium conversation. Where's that little tipping point where you think of scalability for a company that's producing enough reports, has enough data in enough locations that this is probably this would be something good to implement when they reach that growth point for their organization?
Yeah, that's really hard to assess. I think if
Yep. Oh
they
yeah.
are if they're hiring somebody to do the Power BI reporting, I think you're then at the stage where investing time by that person
Okay.
and people within the company
Okay.
in the data quality, it pays off. You that's it will prevent time spent later in the process by validating reports, by maybe even taking decisions on data that is not of a certain quality. Maybe I wouldn't say it's bad data, but
Mm-hmm.
the quality isn't up to par. And yeah, preventing that also has its value. Um, if you just have a single Power BI report and it's not a lot of data, maybe a couple thousand records, couple of columns, yeah, then loading it into something like Databricks,
Yeah.
spending a lot of time to profile and understand it, it's maybe not worth it. But the Power BI built-in functionalities are maybe more low level then.
The and I think that's a good analogy or a good description to like if you have someone who's you don't have the one person who does 30 jobs for the company. You actually have the dedicated analyst, the dedicated governance and person who's doing that. Like this is something that very much should be part of their scope of their job for the company. And also just as a last anecdote, and I had a question from Didier that I was going to bring up. But one thing that I found is a really quick and easy way in Power BI, and I don't think it's used that much by people, but there's the toggle on any particular column, especially with null values, where if you turn that on, do not enforce do not allow for nulls, then that column will fail the refresh in a Power BI data set if that ever does not pass the check. So a quick and easy way to just catch empty data, you flip a toggle on and the entire you'll just get a refresh failed email and you just go back and look at it if you know that this column should always be 100% filled out.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good tip. And that's something like a property on a column in a data set?
Yeah, and I'll paste the link. It's one of those when I built out my training like a year or two ago, I went through and looked at every toggle and documented and mapped it. But there's a column property if you go to the relationship view where like I'll have to remember the exact phrase that it says, but essentially it enforces null values. So it's the equivalent on the calendar table when you set as the ID label column, but you can do that for any column in your model. So if one row is ever null, it just breaks the refresh because it has to have complete 100% filled in data. So it's a really 5-second like quick and dirty way to just without knowing what the problem is, just having a refresh fail notification to go back and look at it, because that way you don't actually load bad data, so to speak.
Yeah, like a constraint, really good one. Yeah. So there's two extra things that I want to show. Three actually. So first, this is the product table again in a different notebook, and I actually want to execute and then see the result of that that expectation validation. So here I make a data frame out of the one above, and then I just simply call this function called expect column values to not be null, and you can just browse all of the available expectation types if you do control spacebar, and then they will pop up. So you don't have to have the documentation of Great Expectation at hand. You can also just, if you don't know the exact syntax, but you know there's a function, just do that, and you'll be quickly up and running. In this case, this is just an example for the column to not be null for the brand class, and the result is successful. And we can see some other metadata and stuff around.
Okay.
And that's a really low level way of executing this framework. So this is the most simple thing you can do. The framework has a lot of capabilities and possibilities that you can use. It's really complex also. I found the learning curve of using this framework quite steep, but they are improving their documentation and that, you know, lowering their learning curve. Something else that I want to show here, yeah, here it is. So they also have built in this capability of having room for error, or like
Okay.
if at least 95% of the column is not null, it's okay. And then below the threshold, this expectation will fail. So that's what the parameter is for.
I like that. Yeah, they have an action function for mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that was like the best naming, but yeah, they can probably not change it easily now. So that was something I wanted to show, how low level it can be to do this. And then second thing I want to show is that I also want to score and check the data in Power BI. And I know that the data in my lake will be consumed by Power BI. So if I check the data in the lake, then, you know, the downstream stuff will have the expectations checked. But Power BI also has measures, and they can be I also want to verify if the output of the measures, the calculated measures, is also correct. And this is a really simple example, but in my data set in Power BI, I have a measure called orders, number of orders. But, you know, use your imagination that this is a really complex calculation, and that I can not check this in my data lake. I have to call the Power BI data set to check the result. Then, since a year, maybe longer ago, we have the capability of executing queries using the Power BI API. So now I can just stay within my notebook and use some Python script to authenticate to my Power BI dataset using the Azure.identity package. In this cell, I have some secrets that I don't want to share. And then I call the Power BI API. And as you see, it did that. And then I have PowerBI.com, groups, and then my workspace ID, datasets, and then my dataset ID / execute queries. And I give it a query in the body of that request. And you only have to build this once, and then you can use this script over and over again by just providing it with the necessary input. And this is my example query, the group ID and dataset ID. And if I then execute that and show the result here, this is what Power BI returns to me. It's a table with some rows and some columns and some values. Not really, you know, checkable. I cannot really send that to the Great Expectations library. But if I make a table out of it, like I did here, now it's just a table. And the column names, maybe I need to tweak that, but it's fine. You can use your imagination how I can maybe further polish this. And now I can send this table to the framework like I did right here. This is also a table, and I say, I expect the column values for this column to not be null. And I could also do that for this one. Like, I expect the number of orders to be maybe even like 287,289 for the month of April in 2022. That could be an expectation, just to verify that the calculation is correct. And then I do that automatically after every data set refresh in Power BI.
Okay. Okay.
So whenever something is off with this calculation, maybe the input data was missing, maybe somebody messed around with the calculation docs, then I verify it, and if something is wrong, I get notified. So that's a really powerful way, an easy way of verifying the output of your Power BI data set, not on a report level, but on the docs level. And what else do I want to demo? I think there's one extra thing, and that's right here. So all of the notebooks that I executed were Python code. And Python is really powerful, and you can do it in Power BI, but there are some limitations, unfortunately. Probably all of the Power BI people already know that, but yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'm underestimating that. But if you want to use Python in your Power BI solution, like, where's the button? Here. Run this Python script, then you can no longer refresh your Power BI solution in the Power BI service. So that's a big constraint of using Python inside your Power Query solution. But let's just for now ignore that constraint and see what we can do then. Is here we have the same products table, and we have a little step called verify warning rules. And if I double click it, I can see a Python script, and it is really simple, only a couple lines of code. The first one says, hey, the data set holds the input data for the script. That's something that you always get when you start using a Python script. It's a comment. You can see that by the pound sign. Then I import pandas, I import grid expectations, and then if you see it's the exact same lines of code as from my notebook. And I just check column values to not be null, and I then normalize the output because it's a JSON structure. I normalize it into a table structure. Then I can take a look at that table structure right here. I see the success column. I see if it raised exceptions or not, and also right here I see, hey, I did an expect column values to not be null for the product key. So I basically did the same thing as in Databricks, but now inside Power Query. And I can now check for this value, and I can say it needs to be true. If it's not true, if this rule failed, then I can fail my my loading. And how do I do that? Just simply add the assert statement in this line. And if you want, you can also add a message to be displayed when it fails. And you can see here, in this case, it failed, and it says the brand class value was not correct. And this will make the Power BI refresh fail. So that's a little trick to do it inside Power Query, but yeah, that constraint of not being able to refresh it in the Power BI service is of course quite limiting.
I have one question from Matthias that I think is good on some of these conversations, and the idea of diminishing returns, because I'd certainly think they're something that I would be really curious to hear. So is 100% data quality really needed? What would be the difference between that and like 98%? Where's the diminishing return in some of these situations?
Yeah, I think I agree that we should not chase 100% for everything, but you should look at it case by case. I in a recent project, I made a big Excel, and every line in Excel was an expectation, and it would say for what table is this, for what column is this, what do I check? So is it a null value check? Is it a data type check? Is it a range value? And then one of the columns for me would say, what is my threshold? Remember the mostly argument?
Yep.
I don't want everything to be 100%. Maybe I want it. I can't. That's not realistic. Some of the data actually have a couple of rows that miss data. Sometimes you cannot fix that. Sometimes you just have to accept it. So you lower your bar for that expectation. And then I ended up with more than 100 rows in that Excel. And yeah, so row by row, you have to evaluate what you want.
When I agree on that accord, and I also would mention that it's like there's sometimes too words. There's only so much you can do to identify, and then sometimes you just have to patch the bad data. It's not even that you can actually permanently fix it. Like I'll go back to that client that I'm working with right now in input forms. Is there's always going to be bad data coming in, just due to the nature of, I think these are paper forms that even have to be converted. So to a degree, it's just that. Like maybe you can make an alert to say that if it's greater than 10%, you can have a discussion to maybe see if you have to go update the form. But otherwise, you need bad data coming in. You basically either get rid of it or transform it or do something else to make sure that it's at least clean by the time you're reporting on it, so it's not throwing off your averages or your calculations or anything else, or skewing the information that is actually good.
Yeah, for me, I also like to split all of the expectations into two categories. One that drives errors, and one warnings. And the category of errors is where I really need my flow to fail and stop, because I just know everything that's going downstream. If I continue working, and then downstream something really bad happens. Usually there's not a lot of expectations that fall into the error category. You might think there are a lot, but then when you really ask yourself the question, can I not have my Power BI data available when this expectation is not met? Usually the answer is no. The report needs to be there, even if the data is not 100% correct. So then you put it in the warning category, and then just make sure that somebody looks at the warnings. And that's a process thing. Send an email, somebody needs to look at it, and then there's a risk of things being neglected or picked up too late. But better late than never.
As one little interesting thing, just in terms of getting notified and having someone looked at it, in theory, a lot of these statuses that you're creating in Databricks, you could use automate to push that into a goal within the Power BI metrics system, because you can grab data from any other system, just basically it's just out in the webs. And there's a flow action where you can say get data point, put it into this goal's target or base comparison. So you basically you can use that as your notification system, and that also can provide some of the other tracking and tell you how much it's a bit above or below a threshold. But I think that could be in theory used if all of your notifications, to look at reports and data, is kind of already existing in goals and metrics. You could integrate that even further, I think, with some of this information too.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. I haven't connected those worlds yet, but you triggered me into maybe.
I'll give it a try. Yeah, Treb showed me that last time, but it's a really easy connector in data flows. It's just you select metrics. I have to keep saying metrics because it's a goal is now part of it. But yeah, you select it and you just pick from the drop down. Like, here's the goals. Put it into one of these two values, and then it automatically occurs. It's like a 5-minute process to set it up, but it allows you to grab data outside of the Power BI ecosystem, which I think not a lot of people realize they can do.
Yeah. That's cool. So maybe even it could be some aggregated level of this report.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, just think of it as almost like a binary flag. Like any of these things can still roll up to good or bad, right? And as long as there's something being outputted, like a 1 or a 0 or anything arbitrary, really just some number that you've assigned or ascribed a value to, or a status, 0 equals status A, 1 equals status B, that basically just easily then feeds into goals.
Yeah, we should explore that.
There you go. One further integration to create like a nice little unified like dashboard, because that already has all those bells and whistles, the charts that show allows for the conversations to happen in Power BI, where you can chat about that with the threads and all those other little nice KPIs and metrics built into it. So it's kind of almost a pre-built reporting system that would be good for statuses like this.
Have you used metrics at clients a lot?
I've implemented it 5 times now with various clients. Each time I've demoed it, it's one of those where for the clients that actually could use it, like just describing it from the fact, hey, how many reports do you look at on a daily basis? Like, okay, it doesn't. You can just completely stop doing that now. As long as you can define when you should look at this and you can give me the logic for that, we can use goals to automate this. And now you only have to look at it when a status changes. And it's, it's all clicky, draggy, droppy, UI built off of these existing cards and reports and everything. So it's been a huge help for clients that can define KPIs. That's the biggest thing. It's like, if you actually can't define what's good and bad for your organization, then like can't really help you. But you have those at least as an idea. I've deployed those, and even with clients who can't define them, usually like, all right, you don't really have a threshold. What about like a 6-month average? Could that be a threshold? Or like something, averaged over the last 3 weeks, or whatever previous year was times 1.2. So I usually pitch a couple of ideas and then go from there. But I really liked it, and I have definitely integrated multiple times, fetching data from other systems as the comparison value to spit back into Power BI for them as well.
Yeah.
My goal with anybody is just automation. You should, death by 1,000 cuts. You shouldn't have to do a task until you need to, right? And I do think metrics is really, really good at removing the monotony of having to just, hey, let's all review this report together today. Well, okay, nothing's changed. We can go back to what we're doing.
Yeah. You only want to take a look at the detailed data when you get pulled into it because of a status change, because of a red flag. And if that's automatable, why not? Why don't we do that? And I think if there is a data quality problem, let's call it like that, and we need to take a look at it, having the metrics, how do you call it? A dashboard or a view?
So metrics is the product now, and a goal is one single thing inside of a metric. So you can have like 30 goals. You have a group where, like, let's assume it's sales group, and then 5 goals for sales. Then you have marketing group, 5 goals for marketing. Everything used to be called goals. Microsoft loves to rename stuff, as you know. So that's why I keep having to remember it's called metrics, which is the button on the left. Goals are every little thing that you set that are related to that. Honestly, I have a group with sets of goals that don't even get data at all from Power BI. It's entirely external, but it's just using Power Automate, which I do think at some point, Microsoft might actually take metrics and just kind of make it its own little package, just because it makes sense, just having a KPI dashboard to be able to monitor changes across any of their systems, which it can technically do, but it's a Power BI feature. So I do think it might become its own standalone thing at some point.
Maybe part of the Power Platform family, call it Power Metrics or something, and have
everything has to have power in front of it.
Yeah.
I will say we're getting at about 10:15. So if there's any other questions from the chat that I haven't or gotten a chance to pass on to Dave to answer, feel free to drop those in again. But Dave, as we're wrapping up, is there anything left you'd want to show or anything as we start to close off?
As a closure, I would say start exploring the Great Expectations package. See if it can work for you. It depends on where your data is, what kind of platform you're using. As I said, if you only use Power BI, it can be a bit too limited to use the full extent of what this package can do. But if you have somewhere in the organization, or if you want to use some notebooks on your laptop, if that's fine by you, then you're good to go. You can just start exploring what this can do for you. It's free. They have a cloud offering that's paid. It's kind of new, but you don't need to use it. They're not pushing you at all to do that, and it's big. It has thousands of active users and collaborators, and the Slack community is also really big. If you have something, you're stuck, you think this should be doable, but I cannot find how, drop a question in the Slack community, or send me a message, then I can help. I have a lot of experience in using this in Databricks and a little bit in Synapse, but all in Spark based compute. And then I hope that you will have more control over your data quality by doing that. And then I hope it will help you to further prevent having data quality surprises and not having
Absolutely.
evening work and weekend work because of that.
Nobody wants to have to work through the weekend to fix an issue for sure. So no, I think this is great. I also dropped your LinkedIn chat down there. This is the first time I got to actually see the platform, so I can definitely see an opportunity maybe for some of my enterprise clients or other smaller clients that might need this. So if at any point somebody needs a more thorough conversation on the art of possible, I know I can hit you up for that. So
yeah, that's good. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Wrong scene change. There we go. Yeah, this has been really fun. I enjoy doing these. The fact that I always get to learn something new and get to learn a new tool as well. So thank you so much for showing this. And I think just broadly having the conversation that we got to dive into a lot of just topics on what defines an expectation. You know, where should you actually focus effort? How much effort should be focused? And a lot. There's a lot of conversation that just goes into you. You have to know the data in the organization to know what's valuable on just making sure it's garbage in, avoiding garbage in, garbage out scenarios, right?
Yeah, and avoiding that people make decisions based on data that's incorrect or incomplete, and that that's all what we're aiming for, right? That we can have better decision making, and this is one of the tools that we can
exactly. Perfect. Then yeah, I don't think I see any other questions in the chat, but it was an active chat and conversation today. Thanks for all the comments. I think Anthony, Matthias, and Didier were some of the top chatters for sure. So thanks for the active participation. Dave, thanks so much for joining on this Friday evening your time. I appreciate it. Always great to have you on, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity at some point again in the larger Microsoft ecosystem to get you back on to talk about another cool topic as well.
Yeah. Well, my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, everyone and Dave, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all online next time.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.